Hi there, my name is Miss Townsend and I love math. Welcome to Math with Townsend. This video is number 5 of a series of videos in which I take up the questions given in the practice package. And again, this is the package of material that you received in class to study from, and it's based primarily on questions asked on the June 2011 EQAO. Let's see where we are. We're on to question 28. Consider the diagram below. Which of the following equations is always true? Okay, so we have a triangle. So we know that A plus B plus C equals 180 degrees. What else do we know? Well, the only other thing is really this straight line here. And that straight line tells me that C plus X must also equal 180 degrees. Those are the two pieces of information that I have. Now, if you look, both of these equations are fairly similar to each other. They both say something plus C equals 180. So something plus C equals 180. Something plus C equals 180. So what does that mean about this and this? Well, they must be the same thing, because whatever A plus B is, when I add C, I get 180. Whatever X is, when I add C, I get 180. Therefore, this must be equal to this, which is exactly what part A says. This is also a law you may have learned called the external angle property, or more formally, the external angle to a triangle property. And what it says is, if you've extended one side of a triangle, the external angle created will have the same value as the sum of the other two angles in the triangle. So here's another example. This angle here would be equal to the sum of this angle and this angle in the same way. Okay, let's look at 29. It says a rectangular sign is built as shown below. The four supports for the back of the sign form four congruent triangles. What is the value of x? So make sure you know what congruent means. Congruent means identical. So in other words, so you can see that there are double lines and single lines. So the angle here, if this is marked as 32, then this would be 32, and this would be 32, and this would be 32. And I know that because I'm told that all of these triangles are the exact same. So you can imagine picking this one up, flipping it over, and here it is now with the 32 angle pointed in this direction. Same thing, you can imagine flipping it down. Here's that 32 degrees and so on. Now I also know that it's a rectangular sign. So I know that these angles here are all 90 degrees, which means in each triangle I can find the other angle. So if this one's 32 and this is 90, so I can use my calculator, 180 minus 90 minus 32, and I get 58 degrees. So that's 58, this is 58, this is 58, and this is 58. Again, because they're all congruent or the same triangles. So now look at x. So if I look at where x is, I've got a nice straight line right here. And I know that I have 58 degrees plus x plus 58 degrees, and all of them together must equal 180 degrees. So x plus 2 times 58, or 58 plus 58, equals 180, and therefore x equals 64 degrees. And that's the answer for D. Good. 30. The cost of an MP3 player is $299. A newer model costs 20% more. Which of the following is closest to the sale price of the newer model after a 30% discount? So I've got to do two things. First of all, I've got to take $299 and I've got to increase the price by 20%. So here's how I like to increase things by a certain percent. I treat it as if I'm adding tax. So here's where the 20% is represented. 0.20 is 20%. So what's the 1 for? The 1 is because I need to also keep the original price. So this really says 100% of the original price plus 20% more on top of it. And when I do this math, 1.20, I'll be able to tell the price once I've added the increase of 20%. So $2.99 times 1.2, it'll give me $358.80. So the new price of the MP3 player, or the newer model, is $358.80. Now I'm about to get a discount. Isn't that lovely? So I'm going to buy this model MP3 player, but I'm going to get a 30% discount. So now I need to take the price, and this time I'm going to multiply by this, 0.70. Why am I doing that? Well, the discount is 30%. So therefore, the original price, which normally is 100% of itself, I'm going to not pay 30% of it. Therefore, I'm going to pay 70% of the price. So instead of calculating 30% and then subtracting, I like to do my math all at once. Oops. So I'm going to calculate 70% because that'll tell me exactly how much I have to pay. And I get $251.16, which is the answer for A. Now, I know that when I do this question with students in the room, someone always has a question. And that question is, could I have just taken 10% off this price instead of adding 20% and then subtracting 30? Well, let's test that. We know that this is the right answer because I showed you all the steps to get this answer. So let's see what would have happened if all I had done is said, increase 20%, decrease 30%. So really, all I need to do is decrease by 10%. And so a decrease by 10% means keep 90%. And that gives me $269.10. Now that's one of the answers, but it's not the right answer. You cannot do this method. I promise you, if it was possible, I would have taught that to you. I'm not withholding secrets. I'm not making you do a long method because I'm mean. You simply can't do that. Okay? You can tell you can't do that. Even for this question, we were off by almost $20. So please make sure you don't try to take a shortcut like that. It's not possible. Question 31. The relationship, the equation d equals 3.6 times the square root of height represents the relationship between distance that a person can see in an open field and the person's height in meters. One afternoon, Amy can see a distance of 4.5 kilometers. Which of the following is her height? So they've given us an equation, and the equation has two variables in it, h and d. And now they're telling us that Amy can see a distance of 4.5 kilometers. So in other words, it's telling us that d equals 4.5. So I'm going to substitute what I know into the equation. And now all I'm going to do is try to solve for h. So using my algebra skills and solve for h. So first of all, I am multiplying by 3.6. So to get rid of multiply by 3.6, we divide by 3.6. So 4.5 divided by 3.6 gives me 1.25. Now I have root h and I want h. So the most important question here is, how do you undo square root? Well, the opposite of square root is square. We've seen that before, but most of the time we're square rooting to get rid of square. Well, this is just the same thing. You square to get rid of square root. It's like multiply and divide. They're a partnership. Add and subtract, partnership. Square and square root, partnership. So I'm going to get h, and 1.25 squared is 1.56. And if I round to 1 decimal place, that's 1.6 meters, which is the answer for B. Question 32. The graph below represents the relationship between the number of calories and the volume for various drinks. Which of the following points represents a drink with more calories than expected for its volume? So here we have that word expected, and that means we're talking about a trend in the data. What is the expectation? What is the trend? Where is the line of best fit? So I'm just roughly trying to fit this line so that about half the points are above and half are below, and that seems to be about right. Now, very clearly, this point here does not seem to fit the trend. R is a little bit below, but Q is an awful lot higher. And I wanted a point that represents more calories than expected. R would be fewer calories than expected. Q is more calories than expected. So the answer is B, Q. Barbecue. 33. Sarah is running a 40-kilometer race at a steady pace of 10 kilometers per hour. Which equation represents the distance Sarah has left to run after she starts, if D is the distance in kilometers and T is the time in hours? So look at the information we're given. We know that her pace or her speed is 10 kilometers per hour. So that means that's her slope. So we think of 10 as the slope. So when I look down at the equations given to me, this one has 10 as slope, so that could be the answer. This one has 10 as slope. This one has 40 as slope. 40t means 40 is the slope, and 10 is the starting value. Well, that sure doesn't make much sense. The last one, same problem. It has 40 as the slope and 10 as the starting value. That doesn't make much sense. So knowing that 10 is the slope means the answer is either A or B. So let's see. I want the equation that represents the distance she has left to run. So when she starts, she has 40 meters left to run. So she should start at 40. A little while later, she's going to have 30 meters left to run. Then she's going to have 20 meters left to run. And then at some point, she'll have 10 meters. Well, I guess I should be saying kilometers. But regardless, as she's running, she has less and less distance to run. I mean, otherwise she'd never get there. So the distance should be decreasing. And the only way to decrease is with a negative slope. So therefore, she should have a negative slope like in answer A because she's losing distance as she runs, because it's talking about the amount she has left to go. So I think I'm going to end this video here. It's the end of video 5, so I'll meet you soon in video 6.